Who's the worst comedian that became famous? Carlos Mencia. Easily one of his jokes was, if Asians are so smart, why are they such bad drivers? Look up the DDD song. There's a whole category of comedians here that are, the only good jokes I've heard out of them were the ones they stole from other comedians. And Mencia's face would be on the cover of that folder. Andy Dick. I feel like Andy Dick was the kid who everyone thought was weird, so he started doing things for shock value and he finally got some attention, so he kept doing it. The entire premise of this humor is that you don't know what's real and what's a show, and now it's his entire personality and he can't even stop himself. Prepare for the arrival of 9,000 Amy Schumers. Actually, way less of them than I expected. B. The correct answer is Brandon Schwab XJ. While he's a terrible comedian, he was also at least mildly famous beforehand from his UFC career and being on Joe Rogan podcast. So not really an unfunny comedian who became famous. He was a famous guy that became an unfunny comedian. James Corden, if you can even class him as a comedian. James Corden. D. Reynolds. She was clearly propped up by her opener, landslide slays. Kenny Banya. I mean, what's up with his fixation on Ovaltine? Kind of surprised no one has said Ellen DeGeneres yet. Her brand of humor, disguised as passive-aggressive bullying, has never elicited a laugh from me. She's not funny, and as it turns out, she's not as nice as she thinks she is either. I came here completely convinced that I was going to say Dane Cook and that I would have been hard-pressed to find someone worse. Then the top post was Carlos Mencia. Okay, Reddit, I stand corrected. You're right, he is worse. I scroll down just a little bit farther and find Andy Dick. This puts me in a bind. Do I keep scrolling farther, or do I embrace the peace brought on by knowing Andy Dick is the worst? I do not keep scrolling. I'm not quite ready to live in a world where there is room under him. Mario fucking Bart. This is a weird request, but R34 I guess. As a guy who takes his comedy seriously and assuming the question is about material and nothing else, I gotta go with Denis Leary, and here's why. In the early 90s, when his album, No Cure for Cancer, came out, me and my post-high school, pre-college, university friends thought it was amazing. It was rude, it was unapologetic, and it was a nice rebuttal to PC culture at the time. Fast forward about a year or two later, and a friend of mine plays me some Bill Hicks, and I was shocked that this dude had lifted almost word for word Leary's said. I remember saying as much, until my friend said, this was recorded almost 2 years before Leary's shit, so I did some research with guys who were coming up in the scene at the time, Jason Rouse, etc. And they were all like, Leary is the biggest fucking hack, and, honestly, wait for him to release another album or tour or stand-up special. So, I waited and yeah, no real original material at all for 30 fucking years. So, there you go, there's being a lifter, and there's being a lazy, line-for-line stealing hack. Fuck that no-talent piece of shit. Greater than Denis Leary. When asked about this, Hicks told the magazine, I have a scoop for you. I stole his, Leary's, act. I camouflaged it with punchlines, and to really throw people off, I did it before he did. When Bill Hicks was asked why he quit smoking, he said, I just wanted to see if Dennis would, too. It makes me terribly angry that Norm Macdonald wasn't more successful in his lifetime. An absolute god of comedy, he deserved the world at his feet. I feel like Norm was as successful as he wanted to be. Could he have been more? Probably, but I doubt he wanted to work that hard. He seemed cool doing what he was doing. A sizable percentage of the English-speaking global audience just didn't get Norm. He told shaggy dog stories with subtlety subversive messages. Way over most people's heads. Amy Schumer. Ah, fuck Reddit's hatred of Amy Schumer. I wanted a bunch of down votes today, anyway. She has great bits, like helping her mom with computer problems or the whole 12 Angry Men parody she did. Worst comedian? Worse than Mencia or the racist puppet guy? Check yourself, Reddit. Agreed. She's not the best, but she's not the demon Reddit makes her out to be. Who is the dude that was a dick to Mark Maron? Dan Ninan. I'm not familiar, but his name sounds like the ESPN anthem. Edit. Specifically SportsCenter, as pointed out by U48OZS. Jeff Dunham. No, you just don't get his subtle brand of humor. Jose, for example, he's a jalapeno. On a steak. Get it? The secret ingredient is racism. Steve Harvey. How that man is famous is absolutely beyond me. Steve Harvey. Asks a sexually suggestive question, contestant gives a sexually suggestive answer. Steve Harvey. What's a word for a man's genitals? Penis. Less than 15-minute rant about how you can't say penis on television greater than. Larry the Cable Guy. I watched him bomb so hard on a special one night he kept asking if his mic was on. I'm all for him being successful, he seems like a nice guy, but it got out of hand when seeing Get R Done merchandise everywhere and got so tired of hearing everyone around me saying Get R Done. He's probably the least funny of the blue-collar boys. He has a few jokes hit here and there. Got to appreciate his dedication to the character, though. Ron White is great for raunchy humor, and Bill Engvall is great for clean family-related humor. Ron White is everyone's fun uncle that they want to sit beside at Thanksgiving. Jimmy Fallon. I watched him kill SNL with his lack of professionalism when telling a joke. Everyone treated him like a genius for not being able to nail a punchline. He continues to lower the standards of joke telling to the point you no longer need to be good at late night to host it. I'll say it, he helped kill cable's appeal versus streaming. Carlos Mencia. Rebel Wilson. All of her humor is either crass body, poop humor or just being mean and terrible. She's also incredibly rude to her crew and an absolute terror on set. It's a tie between Carlos Mencia and Dane Cook. Nah, Dane Cook is bad, but not Carlos Mencia level of bad. Dane Cook has multiple good specials, damn. Gonna be honest, as a teenager I totally understood why he was popular. The drive-through joke made me choke every time I listened to it. Now it could probably get a smile at most, but he definitely has a specific audience. Listening to Dane Cook's comedy, as an adult, makes me feel like he became a comedian just to pick up girls. So much of his material are simple observations that you would use to make a table of ladies laugh on a Saturday night. Add to the fact that his current wife is 30 years younger than him, makes the source of his humor feel weird to me. Brendan Schaub. I am still mystified that Dave Coulier has had a career in comedy. Cut it out. You mean, cut it out. I know I'm gonna get downvoted into oblivion. I scrolled through hella comments and couldn't find a single mention, but Kevin Hart is so unfunny. But he's one of the most famous comedians for no reason. He's little man, loudmouth shtick got old quick. Joe Rogan. I am not a hater, but he is famous and he is a bad comedian. 20 years I've been wondering why he was famous for being a comedian. Pete Davidson. Not that I really even think he qualifies as a comedian. What sets Pete Davidson apart from other stand-up is the 15, s in the middle of every joke. Andy Dick. Jay Leno. If we're talking amount of talent versus the level of success, and he keeps getting less funny. The weird thing about Jay Leno is that I don't think I've ever actually seen his comedy. He never recorded a special, toned it down for The Tonight Show, and a lot of comedians I love, Norm Macdonald for example, spoke pretty highly of his stand-up. Based off Tonight Show alone, I totally agree with you, but I wonder if I'm missing the full picture. Jay Leno was the best of his generation, and his peers have said as much. You can't judge him on The Tonight Show. That was a job he did for NBC, and needed to be one thing, while his actual stand-up was something else altogether. Check out some of his guest appearances on Letterman in the early days to get some sense of what he was like. He still does stand-up every Sunday in LA. Joe Rogan is completely unfunny and also doesn't seem to understand humor himself. I'll never forget when he had Theo Von on his podcast, who quite clearly doing some bits and they just seemed to go straight over Joe's head. I knew Rogan from UFC and from his podcasts. Was very surprised to learn he found fame as a comedian. I watched one of his stand-ups to see if I was missing something and unfortunately was not proved wrong.